Hey everybody, Francis Beck along with Tom Prince. Welcome in to Western New York High School Football Weekly, our first show of the season. I guess you would call this our Week 2 edition. We didn't do one the first week, but we wanted to see, 2 weeks what was really going on, so we gave ourselves a little buffer there to start out with. But Tom and I have a great show planned for you today, so we're going to start. We're going to go over some of the big games from last week that caught our eye. Then we're going to talk about some of the top performances of the first 2 weeks. That'll be followed by then the big games we're looking forward to this week, including the ones that are going to be right here on Western New York Athletics. And then finally, we're going to end it with one of our favorite segments, Freak of the Week.
Two of them. We're going to give two of them out,
that's right. 2 Freaks of the Week.
So listen, what a week right now, right? That we started off with. We're going to kick things right away. Jamestown Orchard Park, no doubt, had to be one of the top games of the week. I mean, what a shootout, 47-35. Personally, I felt it was one play that was the complete turnaround of that game, and unfortunately, it was a missed snap. Right, a snap that went too high over Trey Drake's head as they were inside the red zone, about to go in and take the lead. That snap goes bad. Orchard Park ends up stopping Jamestown, gets the ball back, and turns around and scores themselves. It was the big shift right there, and really was the change in that game.
And you mentioned it. Don't quote me here, but I believe something similar happened in their Lancaster game. They were down inside the goal line of Lancaster, and there was a bad snap, and that was a close game as well. So miscues catching up for the Red Raiders. Although I have to say, I don't think this is necessarily panic time if you're in Jamestown. These are two very good teams in Lancaster and Orchard Park. They are in AA, so you're still 0-0 in your league. I wouldn't panic if I'm the Red Raiders.
If I'm the Red Raiders, know that we just competed with two of the best teams in Western New York and took them to the brink, right? We're ready to now go into conference play. We've proven that. No doubt Jamestown's got nothing to worry about. They're going to be just fine right there. To be honest with you, I also thought this was a very big game for Orchard Park. 2 of the losses last year went against Clarence and went against Jamestown, if you remember, right? Orchard Park comes back with 2 wins this year against 2 of the teams they had losses against last year. I thought that was big for Orchard Park. But no doubt in this game, Trey Drake threw the ball for 48 times, 359 yards, 3 touchdowns. Radon White, 16 carries, 93 yards and a touchdown. Colin Melendez goes for 137 yards receiving with a touchdown, and Darius Freeney 132 yards and a touchdown. Flip it on the other side for Orchard Park. Look at this. 48 times through the ball, Trey Drake. Gosella only throws the ball 23 times, still 354 yards and 4 touchdowns in this one. Carter Switek, the kid probably that is not being talked about in Western New York. He's the sophomore right now going crazy. 17 carries for 120 yards, 2 touchdowns in this one. And then Jackson Newlove was the big receiver, 6 receptions, 145 yards and 2 touchdowns. No doubt that Jamestown's focus was Dylan Evans in this one. They wanted to make sure that Dylan Evans wasn't going to be the guy who would beat him. It was Jackson Newlove who then comes up big, steps up. What do they say? If you're going to take a guy out, make someone else beat you. That's exactly what Orchard Park does right here, and has Jackson Newlove make that step up.
And remember, one of the big questions we had going into the year about Orchard Park, with Keegan Machiavelli gone, who's going to step up and be that other guy on the side of Dylan Evans? Looks like it's Jackson Newlove.
Yeah, and again, also a running game, right? Switek right now is also big as far as the running game is concerned, that if you remember, Orchard Park early on with an injury at running back last year never really had that run game. Now they got the run game here to boot, and really, really the key was what was going to be this line step up for Orchard Park. And the line's been doing really well so far this season, right? At least they've been doing what they needed to do and give Gosella enough time to do what he needs to do to make his place.
All right, our second game we're going to talk about is Olean defeating Dunkirk 12-7. This was a close battle. So Dunkirk actually scored first in the first half, and then Olean actually scored with 29 seconds left to go. It was Kate Anastasia, who we all know, the Anastasia family. He scored for Olean a 25-yard run, on a catch there. 29 seconds left in the half. Then Olean scores again in the middle of the third quarter, and that was it. They won that one 12-7. So key battle down in the southern tier.
And that was big for both teams. Remember, Dunkirk just comes off a heartbreaker against Lakeshore, right? Olean also needed this win. I thought it was a big game for both teams. Defenses step up tremendously in this game. Olean comes up with a much-needed win right there.
Tom, what's our next game?
So the next game would be Will East versus Hamburg, right? Probably the team we're not talking about enough in Williamsville
well,
East.
Well, maybe not you. I talked about them a lot on the Friday Night Final Drive.
Okay. What we said is, but when you look at all the pregame stuff, right, when you look at the preseason stuff, right, it wasn't a team that we really have talked about a lot. And Hamburg is a team that stepped up big, came up with a big win against Lockport in week 1. We saw they want to prove this year that they have enough to get to that stadium. Well, now it becomes Will East who steps up, and really they've got a quarterback that we're also not talking enough about at the same time either.
Well, yeah, his name is Sean Sansone, and it's funny. He actually kind of had a down game in his first one. But I was talking to the Willie's coaching staff. I got the sense he wasn't 100% going into that first game.
That's what I heard too.
And, the second game he turned things around, but they didn't need him that much the first game because they had this running back wide receiver, Dorian Faison Jr. He put on an incredible performance in both games. He has 141 yards rushing, and then receiving, he's got 124 yards of 9 catches. He has I see 5 total touchdowns in 2 games. He's really been the difference this year. We know about Sansone. I think he was a top 5 passer last year in Section 6. But now they have another weapon, a guy who can run the ball a little bit. And we're not even talking about Thomas Orsi, who has 191 yards through 2 games. So this Will East team is proving they are for real. And we're going to talk more about some other teams in A2, but there's a matchup coming up in the next few weeks, which I have my eye on.
We saw one thing Hamburg really needed to fix up with some of the penalties and some of that quarterback exchange right there between the center. Really needed to clean up some of those things. And I'll tell you, Hamburg still, if you guys think they're out of it, not. This is a very good Will East team. Remember Sansone started out a little bit slower last year, came on roaring in the second half of the year. No doubt is going to be another name we're going to be talking about a lot this season.
Tom, the Bennett Tigers, after that heartbreaking, I don't know if it's called heartbreaking, but that overtime loss to McDowell last week, they come home and take care of business against Clarence.
Yeah, and no doubt. And really what you got to look at here is 481 yards by the ground, 5 touchdowns. 135 yards by Kareem Hathcock, 123 yards by Noah McDuffie, 70 yards by Shamir Land, 66 yards and a touchdown by Jaden Lewis, and Land also had a touchdown too. Jameer Thomas, 36 yards and a touchdown. Remember last year when we watched these guys play, they have 6-7 guys that could run the ball and run the ball effectively. Bennett has not changed. They got that, and I'm telling you, this team can bring one running back after another out in this one. And one thing we were also told, if you remember, when I did the preseason interview with Coach McDuffie, he said the one thing they wanted to improve on this year was to make sure they could throw the ball and go by the air. Antonio Davis is ready to take on that challenge. He goes for 155 in this one. He has a great game the first game. He goes down to McDowell, throws more than 200 yards, through some big passes that are come there. I'm telling you, this team's trying to make sure they're not one-dimensional, that they can go both ways, and they got the guys to do it.
All right, from AA, from the large schools go down to the small schools. We had a rematch, or we had, I think, a match of the top 2 teams, 2 of the top teams in Class D, CSP and Randolph, and it was the Cardinals defending Class D champs, taking care of business against a not-so-bad CSP team. They win it 35-18. They went out. They were up 14-10 at halftime and took care of business from there. Leading the way, of course, was Xander Hine. I'm told. I actually talked to the coaching staff. They said it's Xander with a Z. There's no X. They wanted to clarify. I didn't know if you knew that. There's some.
I do say Xander.
So 39 carries, 340 yards, only one TD, but I think the 340 yards makes up for that.
340 yards against a very good CSP team. I mean, that just says it there, right? It really does.
Yeah, and then you had Peyton Slade. He put in 2 receptions, 17 yards. Xander Hine also caught a touchdown. So he put on a great performance leading the way for that. So it's Randolph makes a statement, moving to 2-0, beating a very good CSP team. Tom, let's head over to Class B.
Yeah, Maryvale Albion. We said early on Albion was the team to really watch out for in this division. 0-2 to start off the season, but I'll tell you, this Maryvale team is bringing it from all different spots there, right? We already know, we've already seen one of their top players is going to be Justice Hill. He actually gets the Connolly Cup nomination off this game. He runs for 66 yards, 2 touchdowns in this one, and you've also got right now where they have some help. It's a dual back system. You'll see the baseball player, Dalton Harper, come in there. He actually runs for 9 carries and 36 yards in this one. He'll also go to play a little bit of quarterback, probably see more like that wild cat scenario with him where he could run the ball. He can easily throw the ball out of there. We know how athletic he really is. And then William Schiller, the quarterback there, goes for a touchdown, throws the ball 9 times in that one for 91 yards. You know, we already know Amari Jones for Albion as well as as well as Javon Jones right there are going to lead this team. I do not count these guys out yet. I'm going to tell you right now. We know how athletic Amari can be. You know, we've seen him get the ball to Javon Jones last year. This team is going to figure things out. I also think Shakay Riley is another one you're going to hear about. Slow start or not, right? This is still a very dangerous team when you got kids that are out there doing what they're going to do. Still watch out for Albion. But I got to tell you, you got to love what you're seeing over there in Maryvale. It's been a complete change of there. Love what Coach Theodore is doing over there. I really do. He really is changed a lot of things. And you can just see it in this team right there, led by Justice Hill.
I think on that note, we'll move on to our next game. So Kenmore West, last week they suffered a tough loss to Sweet Home team. Defense gave up, I think, 40, 50 points. They come back. They put out they don't allow West Seneca West to score. It was this 18-7 decision, but the only touchdown came off of a kickoff return from West Seneca West. The Indians were in this late, so after that touchdown on the ensuing kickoff, West Seneca West goes for the onside. They get it. They're driving, and then a turnover. But the Kenmore West defense stood up. They had a great day. I want to shout out to Mason Forney. I interviewed him on our Twitter pages after the game. He had 7 tackles, 2 sacks. I think that's being low. Personally, I thought he had 3 sacks and just one of those on one drive. He had a great game. We know about Jermaine Atkins. He actually did more catching the football. He had 3 catches, 3 for 77 yards, a touchdown. Atkins ran for 53 yards and a touchdown. But their bell cow for Kenmore West was actually Myshawn Porter. He had 13 carries, 76 yards, a TD. If they can get him going, and then you have Atkins can maybe commit more time to the outside, this Kenmore West offense is going to be dangerous later in the year.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So we're going to go right now off to Lockport, Niagara Wheatfield right here. We already know Niagara Wheatfield led by Alexander Fletcher, who is a kid we're going to absolutely be talking about as one of the top quarterbacks in the area. But again, Lockport comes up big, and I really want to stress positive right here, right? We all know, no secret, they lost their quarterback before the year started, right? We had a chat with Coach before the Hamburg game, and he goes, you know what I'm most excited about? Their current quarterback, West, right now, Takai West, comes in and goes, Coach, I got this. Was going to be a wide receiver that was going to probably go after a lot of Malik Brooks records right here. Really had the chance of doing something special this year at wide receiver. But knew his team needed him. Knew he needed to be able to step up, and he did exactly that, and he's come up big. He's gotten this Lockport team to 1 point away from being this 2-0 record right here, right? A great opportunity. You can see this Lockport team is real. We've seen already their line can stand up with a lot of people. They've got a very good line. Was surprised by the size of this line that's out there. And then they can run the ball. They can throw the ball. There's a lot of things they can do. I'm very impressed what we've seen at Lockport. Love the way they come after a loss and come after the Niagara Wheatfield team. This really will be something fun to watch as the year goes on. They're right now, we know, their statement's going to come up this week, and how do they stand tall against Jamestown?
Yeah, that is certainly going to be one. So our final game we're going to talk about is Canisius Aquinas. Remember, going into the year, a lot of questions surrounding this Crusaders team. Coach Krasansky coming in. We heard that we got a lot of transfers out. And, they had that tough loss first week out in Ohio, but they faced an Aquinas team, which is known for having a strong team, and they win this one. It was 14-13. Canisius scored first. They were down at the half, but Canisius scores early in the first quarter, make a 2-point conversion, make it 14-7. I guess Aquinas scored on the following drive, it looks like, but missed the PAT, and that was the final score. So 14-13, Canisius won that one. So we'll see what that means for them going on. We know next week, not this coming week, but the week after, they have a big game against Joe's, so we'll see what those two programs look like. We know Joe's, they're off to a good start, 2-0 start. They've had two huge wins against non-Western New York opponents, so it'll be interesting to see when those two face each other, what they will actually look like.
And we're also looking forward to the matchup this week because they're going to take on West New York Maritime. This
yes.
should be a fun,
oh, how did I forget that? Which we'll talk about more later.
We will. Well, that's going to be a fun matchup, no doubt about it. So I think that's the end of segment one right there.
Yeah, that's the end of our first segment. So coming up next, we'll be talking about some of the top performers, including running backs, quarterbacks, wide receivers, and so much more. You're watching Western New York High School Weekly on Western New York Athletics.
Our homes have become offices, gyms, schools, and playgrounds. And at Western New York Immediate Care, we know you may need us now more than ever. Whether you've suffered a minor injury or just aren't feeling well, Western New York Immediate Care physicians are trained to diagnose and treat most non-life-threatening injuries and illnesses. With 5 convenient locations open 7 days a week, help is never far away. Life has changed, but Western New York Immediate Care is still here for you.
I love being home.
There's nothing better than owning the perfect house to come home to. You've earned it, and we'll make it happen. Our local real estate experts and in-house team of financial professionals make buying or selling your home simple. Howard Hanna. Home happens here.
I love being home.
Welcome back to Western New York High School Football Weekly. Francis Beck, Tom Prince, and we're going to recognize some of the top performances individually here in Section 6 and Monsignor Martin. We're going to start with the Connolly Cup Week 2 Players of the Week. Chris Bergman from Akron, Jaden Clark, Canisius, Kendall Donovan, Williamsville North, Trey Drake, Jamestown, Ethan Fry, Fredonia, Ben Gosella, Orchard Park, Tyone Galante, Salamanca, Bryce Hindell, CSP, Jackson Newlove, Orchard Park, Gian Nunzo, Franklinville, Elkinville, Rashad Perry, Bennett, Sean Sansone, Will East, Kyle Stover, Pioneer, Jameer Thomas, Bennett, and Shea Williams from Lockport. We do want to clear a few things up. I know there was a little bit of controversy on the Connolly Cup when we put it out this week. So we do want to clear things up, which make things a little easier. So for the first 4 weeks, the Connolly Cup does all brand new guys. So they won't duplicate until the 5th week. The idea is they want to get as many kids recognized as possible. So if you were nominated week 1, you aren't going to get nominated week 2 no matter what kind of game you have, just because you've already been nominated and you're already in the list. And all you need is one nomination and you're in their pool, you're on their radar to be a finalist and to win the award. So if you've already been nominated and you have a great week 3 and you're not nominated not nominated for it, it's because you're already nominated. It's not because they didn't see you or recognize what you did. That's the reason why. And if you haven't been nominated yet, there's still plenty of time to get nominated. These, the committee knows who these guys are, and it's just a matter of these guys getting around to you and finding the week to put you on there. So if you feel like you should have been on there, you're going to be on there pretty soon.
Remember, the back half you can start duplicating these too, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
the back
Once you get to week 5 is when you'll start to see your second nomination. So I'm sure Trey Drake is going to put up a couple more weeks. He'll probably get another nomination maybe in week 5, week 6, week 7. So you are getting recognized. Nobody's missing anybody. I think by the end of the 4 weeks, I think anybody who really is in the race will be nominated at that point.
And then the Trent's Trophy, so everyone understands what that award is. It is a senior-driven award for a lineman, offensive lineman or defensive lineman, right, or both in a lot of cases. But that is strictly a line award for a senior. When they have their banquet, they will bring in some underclassmen to do an underclassmen award, but this is a senior-driven award.
And there's no there's no weekly nominations for the underclassmen award. They're just going to name it at the end of the year. So if you're an underclassman, just keep playing. Don't have to worry about that award right now.
And for the seniors that do get this, you can only be nominated once in the entire time. So you can't get nominated multiple times for the Trent's Trophy. It's just one time. So here are your winners for Week 2. Ryan Carpenter of Randolph, Kyron Johnson of Portville, Anthony Cronbeck Jr. of JFK, Evan Locke of Williamsville North, Rashad Perry of Bennett, and David Rosati of West Seneca East are your winners for Week 2 right there for the Trent's Trophy.
And look at that, a double nomination for Rashad Perry. I don't know how many times that has happened. I'm guessing not very often that not only has a player been nominated for both, but on the same week. You don't see that very often.
No, you really don't. I 100% agree with you right there. And I was just trying to see if I got it real quick. Just to let you know, since we didn't get a chance, here are your ones for Week 1 because we didn't get a chance to do it. Jadon Blajewski for Olean, Xavier Barrero of Western New York Maritime, Sunday Iquinawu of Lackawanna, Luke Prince of Orchard Park, and Shane Renero of West Seneca West. There are your winners right there for Week 1.
Luke Prince, Orchard Park. Do you happen to know him by any chance?
I don't know who he is. No, but he had actually a great week that week. He's actually had 2 great weeks, but this one was for when he went out and blocked that extra point. You saw that's picture. There's a picture out there. If you take a look, we'll go to Twitter. Harry Skull gets him as he's going up in the air. Great shot. Harry's is going to be a picture I'm going to remember for a lifetime. Thank you so much, Harry.
All right, so now we're going to recognize some other players, some of the top running backs, wide receivers, and quarterbacks. So we'll start with the running backs, and we're going to kind of go over Week 2 and Week 1 a little bit. So we picked out the top guys from both weeks because we want to get them all covered. So let's start out with Tonawanda running back Alexander Gallo. Week 1, he comes out, leads the Warriors in a 22-20 win over Eden North Collins. He runs for 239 yards and 3 touchdowns. The following week, the Warriors lose, but he still has a great performance. 38 carries, 221 yards, also has 3 touchdowns. He's right now second in rushing in all of Section 6.
Helps coach come out with a 1-0 victory in that one. That's a great one right there, and I'll tell you, for multiple reasons to get him that one. But Eden's a very good team right there where Tonawanda comes out. You can see as somebody we were not talking about early in the year coming on big. The next one who we will be talking about, and no doubt we should see nominations come more and more for this gentleman, Cameron Warburton. He comes up big. In their lot, they have a lost first game to West Seneca East. He runs for 184 yards in this one, and then he goes against Lewiston Porter for 260 yards in that one. Plus, he has a reception in the West Seneca East game for 43 yards. To be honest with you, one of the things probably that's most impressive about Warburton right now, he's averaging 12 yards a carry right now for the 2 games. This kid's for real in Cheektowaga, folks, and I'll tell you, we're going to hear more about him.
You imagine that a carry is almost guaranteed a first down.
I'm just listen. We knew, and we talked about him coming into the season, right? This kid's a beast, and he's got a good chip on his shoulder right now because he wants to prove how good he really is.
All right, our next one is another beefy running back. We're going out to Iroquois, talk about Trevor Berry. He comes out the first week. It helps the Chiefs to a 31-14 win over Southwestern, 233 yards, 2 TDs. And the following weeks, he follows it up with a 200-yard game. He averaged 18.2 yards a carry and scored 3 touchdowns. So Trevor Berry, I would say unsurprisingly, is off to a great start for the Chiefs.
Then our next one we want to talk about is Jordan Theodore out of Sweet Home. 256 yards and 5 touchdowns in his first game against Ken West. He follows it up against a game against North Tonawanda for 101 yards and 2 touchdowns in that one.
Only ran the ball 8 times.
Yeah, 8 times, right, for 101 yards. Plus he has a catch, or he has 3 catches for 77 yards, adds a touchdown. He's already got 8 touchdowns early on in this season. This kid's off to something start for Sweet Home.
Tyrone Hughes led all of Section 6 freshmen in rushing last year, and he's off to a good start in his sophomore campaign. 189 yards in the first week and a 44-12 win over Kenmore East. He follows that up with a 160-yard effort against Hutch Tech in a 24-6 win. 2 touchdowns in each. I believe he's now the 6th leading rusher in Western New York, in Section 6, I should say.
The next one we're going to talk about is a player that I have said from the beginning of the year, watch out for. He's one of the most underrated running backs. He's a kid that does it all for Medina. That's Noah Skinner, as he's got 195 yards in game 1 in a win over Newfane, follows it up with 133 yards in the win against Roy Hart Barker Lindenville. Plus, against Newfane, he's got 4 catches for 54 yards. Against Roy Hart Barker Lindenville, 1 catch, 65 yards, leads to a touchdown. I'm telling you, this guy's a workhorse. He is someone you got to watch out for every single week.
And I think he might have been, remember, he was going under the radar last year because he had so many guys around him. Now it's his turn to take over this team, and if Medina's right back in the thick of it, he'll be the reason why.
And that line is legit, right? He's running behind a very good line right now that all came back. This Medina team, we said, they're far from over. They got some more to prove.
All right, down we'll go to the Southern Tier. We're going to talk about a dual threat QB, Gian Nunzo. So the first week, he runs for 184 yards on 15 carries, scores a touchdown, throws 2 for 5, 22 yards. Second week, he kind of flips that. Second week, 18 carries, 94 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he throws for 156 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he's off to a great season for the Franklinville-Elginville Titans.
Now we'll flip it where really the week 2 was their big out, right? No doubt the kid we're going to be talking about, and he was already recognized last year as a top running back, Xander Hind. And he goes against Salamanca week 1. Remember, they start out a little bit slow, Randolph, come raring back. He goes for 132 yards. Then he follows it up against an incredible and a very good CSP team for 340 yards he goes for in this one. Unbelievable what this kid can do. He also had 2 catches, 1 for 28 yards in Salamanca game, 1 for 16, and a touchdown in the CSP game. I'll tell you, this kid is the real deal, and he does it again. 354 yards rushing.
All right, our next player, kid you saw a lot last on Thursday, Kaden Holcomb. His first game went 24 carries, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns. Second game, Frewsburg, he went 12 carries, 128 yards, and 6 touchdowns. And I believe, what did he get all in the first half?
All in the first. He didn't play in the second half. He didn't even run the ball in the second half. This kid did it all in a half. Unbelievable. If he would have run for, I could just imagine what the yards he would have run for. Crazy. This kid was, and you got to see the moves here. He literally stopping on a dime, making the right moves, great cuts, great movement, found the holes. Great job there by Hilcomb, I'm sorry. And the reason I said Switek is because that was our next one that's coming up right there. So Carter Switek of Orchard Park, the kid we talked a little bit about earlier, he's got 6 touchdowns early in the season. He goes for 110 yards against Clarence. He goes for 120 yards against Jamestown. But then he also has 2 catches receiving against Jamestown for 90 yards and a touchdown. So 6 touchdowns by the sophomore early. And think about it. 210 yards against Jamestown comes from that young man right there.
Our next player, Kareem Hathcock. We mentioned Bennett has a crowded backfield, and the man leading the way is Kareem Hathcock. Transfer Canisius off to a good start. First week, he went for 109 yards, rushing on 24 carries. Second week, he comes out big, 10 carries, 135 yards, 2 touchdowns. So he is off to a good start for the Bennett Tigers.
Now we'll go down to Olean, where Memphis App right now deserves some recognition. 105 yards run in the first week, 126 yards in the second week. They played East Aurora Holland week 1, Dunkirk, as we already talked about, in week 2. He's got 2 receptions for 17 yards against East Aurora Holland and 4 receptions for 34 yards against Dunkirk.
All right, and the final running back we'll talk about is Dalton Caldwell out of Falconer, Cassadaga Valley, Maple Grove. First week, 19 carries, 106 yards. And the second week, 14 carries, 106 yards, 2 touchdowns in both of those games. That's Dalton Caldwell for Falconer, Cassadaga Valley, Maple Grove. Tom, let's talk about some guys in the
Real
outside.
quick on him. Last year, we had a chance to really recognize him, and you remember I was putting out those lists last year, right? He would just miss it every single time. It was always 120, 130, because it was 150 to get on the board. But tell you, he deserves some recognition. He's a big reason why that team's off to a fast start right now.
Yep, that team 2-0 this season. Tom, let's move on to wide receivers.
So the guy who's leading the way right off the bat is a name everybody recognizes, Bryce Hindell from CSP. He is off to the fast start. The sophomore with 291 yards early on in this one. He goes for 143 yards in his first game against Wilson, follows it up with 148 yards in his second game against Randolph. He is absolutely off to the start that CSP needed right here.
All right, our next receiver going to be out of Bill South, Daniel Peoples. Billies are 0-2, but Peoples has really been the bright spot for this team. First game comes out, 10 catches, 141 yards. Second game, 5 catches, 106 yards. And so this guy has been all over the field. He could run all the routes. I saw him in person. He is going to be big for this Billies team this year.
Next one we're going to recognize goes off to Bennett. For Jameer Thomas, the wide receiver, against McDowell, he goes 6 catches for 140 yards. Against Clarence, he goes 5 catches for 105 yards, but he can also run the ball. Against McDowell, 5 rushes for 37 yards. Against Clarence, 4 rushes for 36 yards and adds a touchdown. I'll tell you, he is somebody to watch out for.
Next player, we're going to South Park, Nanny Rivera. First game, he had 6 catches, 165 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a losing effort to Frontier. And the next week, Sparks come back at a 44-0 win. He has 5 catches, 77 yards. So he sits at 242 for the first 2 weeks, and I believe he's a top 5 receiver in Section 6.
Next one we're going to go out is to Akron for Donnie Crayer. He has his first game out there against Fredonia, 8 catches, 180 yards he puts up in a touchdown. Against Tonawanda, he goes 3 catches for 41 yards. But, boy, that 180 yards is something to watch out as he kicks off the season.
Ben Dixon from Newfane. The Panthers are off to an 0-2 start, but he's one of their bright spots so far this season. First game against Medina, he catches 10 balls, 106 yards. And in the second game, in a tough, close loss to Eden North Collins, he has 5 catches for 90 yards and a TD. He also had 10 tackles against Eden North Collins as well.
Wow. Well, now we're going to go off to to McKinley for the senior wide receiver. His kid's got height to him. They got to get the ball to him. Game 1, he goes for 2 receptions, 170 yards. So think about that. 2 receptions, one of them for 90 yards, then one of them for 80 yards, right? And he goes for a touchdown in this one. He is absolutely a huge threat to this McKinley team, who's off to a very far start. And we said early in the season, watch out. We knew McKinley was going to be good.
Next, we'll go back to Bennett. We'll talk about Jane Lewis. Of course, we know he had a great defensive effort, especially in that run to States last year. But he is contributing on offense as well as a receiver. He hit in that first game. He had 4 catches, 123 yards, and a TD. Second game, he only had 2 catches for 34 yards. But he's also contributing to the run game. 27 yards against McDowell, 66 yards against Clarence. I'm sure they're using him on jet sweep. And then on defense, he's made 11 tackles this year, no interceptions yet. I imagine that's because receivers their quarterbacks aren't throwing anywhere near him.
Oh, well, or, I mean, he also played a very good McDowell team right there. And Clarence doesn't throw the ball a ton out there. They do a lot of running. So no doubt that Lewis was definitely probably bigger on the offensive side of the ball in that one. So for week 1, one of the last big ones for week 1 comes from Iroquois, where a name that we've heard multiple times, Nate Mcgoldrick, who in his first game goes 8 catches for 112 yards, 2 touchdowns in that one. He only had 1 catch for 17 yards in the win over Lakeshore, but that first week comes up big and shows why he was one of the top receivers in Western New York last year.
JFK got a win this week again over Springville 20-6, and one of the biggest reasons was Lucas Gang. He was a threat both on the ground and through the air. He ran the ball 12 times in both games, has about 136 rushing yards between the 2 games. And then against Springville, he was a bigger threat catching the ball. He had 7 catches, 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. He has 232 yards receiving total on the year. So Lucas Gang having a big year for JFK, hoping to help turn that program around.
Next one, we're going to go down to Jamestown. Darius Freeney, who the first week goes 8 receptions for 84 yards against Lancaster, follows it up with 6 receptions for 132 yards, a 52-yard catch, and a touchdown in that one as he comes up big in Jamestown with that passing attack by Trey Drake.
We talked about him a little bit in our last segment. Jackson Newlove of Orchard Park. You mentioned Jamestown defense was all over Dylan Evans. They were not going to let him destroy them, go after them. So the man they turned to, Jackson Newlove, he stepped up and delivered. He had 6 catches, 145 yards, 2 touchdowns against Jamestown. He has 10 catches, 200 yards overall this season. I believe he's 9th on the Section 6 list, top receivers in receiving yards. So it's Orchard Park's Jackson Newlove.
So not only was Freeney a big receiver for Jamestown, but now here's our second one that from Jamestown, Colin Melendez, he also goes for 100 yards in that game against Orchard Park. But he kicks it off with 3 receptions for 39 yards against Lancaster, and then goes 12 receptions for 137 yards and a touchdown against Orchard Park.
Fredonia is off to a 2-0 start, in large part thanks to receiver Jamison Quinn. Last game, he had 10 catches, 139 yards, and a 26-3 win over Allegheny Limestone. Also had a pair of touchdowns, so he's off to a great start for the Fredonia Hillbillies.
So I guess we're going off to the quarterbacks, huh?
Yeah, let's move it on to the quarterbacks. Who we got first?
Oh, we start out with right now the number 1 quarterback in passing yards goes to Noah Willoughby of South Park as he's off to an incredible start. He goes in week 1 for 325 yards against Frontier, follows it up with 234 yards against Amherst. It was a loss to Frontier, a win against Amherst, and then he adds 57 rushing yards against Frontier, 12 rushing yards against Amherst. Both were touchdowns rushing the ball in each of those games. And I'll tell you, we knew ahead of time this kid's for real, and he's already proving it out, getting off to a fast start.
We've talked about it a lot already. We'll talk about it some more. That Orchard Park Jamestown game was a shootout, and the losing quarterback, Trey Drake, had a phenomenal game. He was 24 for 48, 359 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had a great performance. He now has 547 yards on the season to go along with 4 touchdowns, one of the top QBs right now in Section 6.
The next one has been battling for top spots. We got 4 guys right now over that 500-yard mark. Here's one of them. He comes from CSP. Tate Catanese is who it is. And he actually goes for, in game 1, 187 yards against Wilson, but then comes up with 346 passing yards against Randolph with a touchdown in that one. He also rushed the ball in Wilson for 142 yards. So think about that first game, 142 plus 187. He had 320 yards right there in game 1, follows it up with 346 yards in game 2. No doubt one of the quarterbacks to watch out for in Western New York, and he's showing he's up in the upper echelon.
Since Tom wouldn't talk about it, I'm going to talk about Ben Gosella. He faced off against Trey Drake. The winning quarterback had 354 yards, 16 of 23. He threw 4 touchdowns, bring his total to 5. So he's at 542 yards in the season. I believe he's second in passing in all of Section 6.
Yeah, and it's tight, right? 559 Willoughby, 547 Drake, 542 Gosella, 533 Catanese. You can just see those top 4 are going to be battling it out right now. The next one we're going to talk about is from Niagara Wheatfield, and that's Alexander Fletcher. We've alluded to him already, where he has went out 259 yards in the win against Hutch Tech. He had 201 yards in the loss to Lockport. He also had 55 yards rushing in the game against Hutch Tech, 10 yards rushing against Lockport. He rushed for 1 touchdown against Hutch Tech and also had 3 touchdowns by the air against Hutch Tech, 3 touchdowns by the air against Lockport.
All right, Tom, you mentioned it in our first segment. Bennett wants to throw the ball this year, and quarterback Antonio Davis III has delivered. First game against McDowell, he was 13 of 23, 291 yards, 2 touchdowns. Second game, they don't throw the ball as much, still had 155 yards, has 446 total this year, so he is off to a good start for the Tigers.
Didn't need to because they ran the ball for over 450 yards, right? So that's the reason why right there. But it just shows they are trying to make sure that they can win by both ways, and that's something that I know Coach was working on. So let's go down to Fredonia next, where we're going to talk about the quarterback, Ethan Fry, right there. He comes up with 130 yards in the win against Akron with a touchdown. He comes up with 274 yards in the win against Allegheny Limestone with 2 touchdowns there. Now, again, remember that 130 against Akron? Well, he runs for 138 for 3 touchdowns against Akron also. Follows it up with 31 yards rushing and a touchdown against Allegheny Limestone. He does it by the air. He does it with his legs right there. No doubt Ethan Fry, a double threat quarterback.
Joe Licata was a great quarterback at the high school level, even better quarterback for UB. And so the big question is, who would be the quarterback in his first year as head coach in Will South? And the answer is pretty much Caden Overcamp, a sophomore, and he's been delivering so far. First game against Will East, he goes 19 of 40, 258 yards, 2 touchdowns. Second game doesn't do quite as well, 7 of 20, 81 yards, but he has 339 yards on the season for Will South. So you can see Joe Licata already implementing his offense and his style in over at Williamsville South.
So the next one we're going to go back to is back to McKinley. Brandon Legans for McKinley. He's come up big in week 1 against Ken Maurice with 242 yards. Only 7 of 9 in that game for 242 yards, 2 touchdowns. He goes for 82 by the air against Hutch Tech. He can also run the ball. 34 rushing yards against Ken Maurice. He runs for 11 against Hutch Tech. Both wins for McKinley right there.
Chris Bergman got a Connolly Cup nomination this week. He did it, and he was a dual threat this for the Akron Tigers. He had 72 yards, 2 touchdowns rushing. Throwing the ball, he threw for 81 yards, going 6 of 8. First week, he did even better. He threw for 241 yards and a touchdown and ran for 115 yards in a loss to Fredonia in the first week.
The last one. I must have said this how many times. The player that we're not talking about enough out there, especially from the quarterback position, the one that will be surprising everybody this season, and he's off and he already has a Connolly Cup nomination. That is Bill Geschel from Lackawanna. He goes for 170 yards by air for Lewiston Porter for 2 touchdowns. He goes for 206 in the air with 3 touchdowns against Alden. He also rushes for 54 yards and a touchdown against Lewiston Porter, and he rushes for 20 yards against Alden right there. And he can do a lot with his legs and throwing the ball. 3-year starter right there. I'm telling you, this is a kid that we don't talk enough about. This Lackawanna team is big. They've got some great defense. They got a great line. This is a team is without injuries, or they keep that team intact. Watch out as they make a run in that C division.
Quick other Lackawanna plug, Caleb Kinsey. He's a linebacker for the Steelers. He overcame lymphoma over the past couple years. He's back and playing. We're going to have a story about him in our Western New York football report, which comes out on Wednesday. I think on that note, we'll take another break. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the games of the week coming up, the ones you need to watch for this week. This is Western New York High School Football Weekly on WNY Athletics.
When you're ready to buy a home, start with a visit to howardhanna.com. You can find new listings before they appear anywhere else and refine your search for immediate notifications of similar properties. Plus, get pre-qualified to make your offer stronger and connect with a local Howard Hanna agent who knows your area and how to close the deal. So when you're ready to buy, visit howardhanna.com and find your home fast.
I love being home.
Logistics Plus is a global transportation provider headquartered in Erie, PA, with locations worldwide, including right here in Western New York. Logistics Plus is consistently recognized as a fast-growing transportation and logistics company, great supply chain partner, top freight broker, leading project cargo manager, and a great place to work. With a strong passion for excellence, our 500-plus employees put the plus in logistics. Call our Buffalo office today for an efficient, personal approach for all of your transportation needs.
Welcome back to our third segment of Western New York High School Football Weekly, first edition of the 2022 season. And we're going to talk about the games coming up this week. We'll start Thursday night football game of the week. It's going to be South Park against Kenmore East. We talked about a couple guys from South Park. They're going to certainly be putting on a show for us on Thursday night.
No doubt. And the question is, can Ken East stop Noah Willoughby? That's going to be the big question
and
right
his
there.
receivers.
Yeah, well, and again, but if that line gives Willoughby enough time, he will have a day out there and could put up some big yards in this one, especially when you thought South Park comes up. That first week loss to Frontier, you got to think there's a chip on your shoulder right there. Got to get better. Got to improve. Every game is important, especially in that A division. They're going to go after this one.
All right, Friday, we have a triple header, and we're able to do 3 games all at 7 o'clock. It'll be Lockport at Jamestown, Fredonia at Tonawanda, and Pioneer at West Seneca East. Tom, what excites you most about those games?
Pioneer West Seneca East is the game to me out of all 3 of those, right, that you got to really watch out for. Pioneer off to a fast start right there. West Seneca East, I thought game 1 comes up with a big win over Cheektowaga. This Cheektowaga team is for real, but West Seneca East, again, does what it needs to do to come up with a win. Can they do it again against Pioneer? Because I'll tell you, Pioneer really is showing they can put points up on the board. They got a line. They got a lot intact right here. This could be right now a huge game inside that division.
You know, we mentioned Jamestown. They're going to have a chance to get their first win of the season against Lockport. They're going to finally be at home. That's why we're able to bring that game to you live and not on tape delays. We had to in the previous week. So that is certainly going to be a fun one there. And then Saturday, we only have 1 game on tap. But as we mentioned, it's going to be a big one.
So to finish off, though, on that Friday, Lockport-Jamestown is going to be a fun one. Lockport trying to prove something right now, right? 1-point loss to Hamburg, come up with a big win against Niagara Wheatfield. Can they now step up and do the same thing against Jamestown? And Jamestown 0-2 is not going to take the foot off the gas right now. You know they're going to they want that win. They want to get on the scoring column. This could be a game that we really see a lot of points put up on the board. There's no doubt about it.
Well, you saw what they did against Orchard Park.
Yep.
If we get anything close to that, that is going to be a fun one to do. And our Saturday game is going to be Western New York Maritime at Canisius. They renew. What is this? The third time they're facing off, or fourth?
Well, no, because they played St. Francis in the middle.
No,
of
no,
there
no. I
too,
mean
didn't they?
Maritime playing Canisius.
Yeah, I know. Did they play Canisius every year though? For the last 4 years?
Oh, you're right. They might have only. Oh, they didn't play the COVID year, I think.
So yeah, I know there may have been something in there, but listen, I say this every time that a smaller school in the essence of an A school will try to step up to the double A's, right? Or in other words, here is I consider the top Monsignor Martin would be like what we compare to a double A school, right? So the question is, will Maritime's line be able to hold serve against Canisius? That's still Canisius' strength. They've got a very good line that's out there, and can they give their quarterback enough time to get the ball to the outsides? Because they do have some very good receivers there at Canisius.
Yeah, and don't forget Maritime has that running game as well. Caesar Atkins had a great game. He had wonderful breakaway speed. He was really the difference against Williamsville South. South kept that game close for a long time. I think part of it was, there were some mental errors on both sides that I think, mental errors for Maritime that really didn't allow them to break away from the game. But once they did, it was Caesar taking off. And, once he gets to once you give him a little room, he's off. No one can catch him.
I say this every single year, but you gotta love Coach Parker right here. The fact that he is fearless on who he takes, but he gets his team ready for a run, right? He's getting them ready for divisional play. He's getting them ready for the philosophy that we're going to go farther than the sectional play. And this is how you do it. You play the best, and he goes out after that. And I give these guys a ton of credit. Do not think that Maritime is not going to bring this, because that Maritime's got this circled on the calendar. They're pumped, they're ready, and they want to make a statement. There's no doubt about it.
All right, so that game is 2 o'clock Saturday, and it'll be right here in Western New York Athletics. Some other games we're keeping an eye on. Let's start with these first two. Randolph against Franklinville, Ellicottville, and then Ken West McKinley. What do you think of those two games?
First of all, let's start off with Randolph and Franklinville. If you think that the D does not have good football, you are crazy, Western New York. This could be a matchup that we're talking about that could be like a potential state championship type matchup. That's how good these two teams are in D. And I'll tell you, this is going to be a battle right here. The question is, does Franklinville-Ellicottville got enough to stop Xander Hind?
And that's the question everybody in Class D is going to try to answer, who's going to be able to stop them. Ken West McKinley, Blue Devils bounce back, as we mentioned before, with a win over West Seneca West. McKinley's off to a good 2-0 start. But let's be honest, they face Kenmore Reese and Hutch Tech, so the Macs still have a lot to prove.
I got a chance to still see them play some stuff over the summer. This McKinley team's for real. And you know where it begins? That line they got a big line. They got a wide receiver we have talked about in Borton that's 6'8", or ever how tall he is. Plays center for the basketball team. This kid's for real. They can run. They got speed all over the place. And I'll tell you, Ken West, we know, has got a running back that you're going to be able to stop. So if we're talking about speed for one team, we're talking about a great running back for the other team. Where's it going to be won or lost? It's going to be the trenches. Does Ken West have enough to stop the trenches of McKinley? That's what we're going to find out.
Next two games, Hamburg, who I think was a little injury-riddled their first 2 weeks. They take on a West Seneca West team. As I mentioned, they're looking to bounce back after that loss to Kenmore West, where their offense didn't score at all. And then Bennett's heading on the road again to take on Austintown Finch in Ohio.
You got same thing we just talked about with Coach Parker. You've got to give the same nod to Coach McDuffie. He's going out there trying to find some great teams, some non-conference matchups that he could get his team ready for, as they are trying to go on for a sectional title. They believe they've got enough to go on for a state title. And these are the type of games you need to play to make sure your team knows when adversity hits or how good another team is, do you have enough to win that game.
Meanwhile, Williamsville North, a team we weren't sure about going into this year, they're off to a 2-0 start. They defeated Frontier last week, 41-13. They now, in a non-league game, they host Lancaster. What do you think we can expect from that one?
Well, we've seen already, like they come up with a big win over Frontier, right, to kick off the season. Everybody sorry, it wasn't Frontier. Their second game was against Frontier. Their first one was against Niagara Falls, right? So they step up right there, then play somebody in division, in other words, in the A division, and they really come up big, and you're kind of looking at it going,
This was a Frontier team that they went to the Class A final last year.
Absolutely, right? So you knew that that Will North has got something here, right? We already know they've got a running back to be able to go out there. So this is a great game just to see where you are, right? Is it going to be a close game? Is it something that we can go and hang our hat on? Is it something that we can go build off? I like this game just to be able to help Will North to understand, am I going to be able to compete with the Jamestowns? Am I going to be able to compete with what could be the upper echelon of this division? This is a great barometer, especially as I head into week 4 against Jamestown. You're going to know exactly where you stand.
I was about to say, what better test for Jamestown than Lancaster? And our last 2 games here, we have Orchard Park at Sweet Home, a game I know you'll be at, and then Falconer, Maple Grove, Cassadaga Valley at Cheektowaga. You know, I think I remember when we were going through the games a few months ago to the start of the season, we saw OP or Sweet Home, and we're like, all right. And then now, what a world of difference. That could be a fun one.
Well, it's going to understand, again, same thing Will North is trying to do with Lancaster, Sweet Home's going to do with Orchard Park. Right? Where do we stand? Can we step up with some of the upper echelon teams? We're going to see a better line. We're going to see some of the things, right? How do we match up against the AA team, which should be teams that are in the upper echelon of the A, and how do we step up? Because if we do, it could be a great building block for us to go into what's going to be our division.
And then, of course, I mentioned Cheektowaga hosting Falconer, Maple Grove, Cassadaga Valley. Cheektowaga hoping to get above 500 after they won last week big against Lockport.
And they come up with 2-0 to start the season, right? Cheektowaga comes up with an early loss to West Seneca East, right? Comes up big again against Lockport. This is a game where Falconer, Maple Grove, Cassadaga Valley, let's see where we stand now, right? Are we good enough to play with the big boys of the conference, in essence, right? And are we going to go out and do what we think we're capable of doing? We've done it against 2 teams already, but this Cheektowaga team is another team right out there. And I'll tell you, if they can keep this one close and actually go after a win in this one, this could really set the fireworks off there for this team, and really a great start.
And again, in week 1, Cheektowaga was down by, I think, 2 or 3 touchdowns and came back in the fourth quarter, almost won that game. So Cheektowaga is certainly going to be into it for, again, till the end. I think that's going to be a good game. I think on that note, we're going to take another short break. When we come back, we're going to honor our week 1 and week 2 Freaks of the Week. That's coming up on Western New York High School Football Weekly on WNY Athletics.
Western New York Immediate Care's new locations are now open. Whether you've suffered a minor injury or just aren't feeling well, Western New York Immediate Care provides safe, quick, high-quality care at an affordable cost. Our clinicians are trained to diagnose and treat non-life-threatening injuries and illnesses and are equipped with on-site x-ray and labs to help you feel better, faster. With 4 convenient locations open 7 days a week, Western New York Immediate Care is here to help when and where you need us. Visit us online to learn more.
Logistics Plus is a global transportation provider headquartered in Erie, PA with locations worldwide, including right here in Western New York. Logistics Plus is consistently recognized as a fast-growing transportation and logistics company, great supply chain partner, top freight broker, leading project cargo manager, and a great place to work. With a strong passion for excellence, our 500-plus employees put the plus in logistics. Call our Buffalo office today for an efficient, personal approach for all of your transportation needs.
Welcome back to Western New York High School Football Weekly. Francis Peck, Tom Prince, and we are going to honor our Freaks of the Week, or actually, Freak of the Weeks, I think you would, because we're going to do week 1 and week 2 together. I'll get started. Our week 1 Freak of the Week, coming from Sweet Home, it's running back, linebacker Jordan Theodore. He put on a great performance in week 1 against a good Kenmore West team, which, as it turns out, shut out West Seneca West in the following week. I want to pull up his stats so we have it here. I should have had that up earlier, but that's okay.
Was it 254 yards and 5 touchdowns?
Now I can't click on his name. Yeah, I think it was 250 yards and 5 touchdowns. He's got 357 on the entire year, 7 touchdowns. Yeah,
256 yards. I was off by 2.
256 yards, 5 touchdowns. He goes for our Freak of the Week. I remember I talked to him over the summer. Cross Training Athletics had that combine. It was actually at Sweet Home early. I believe it was in July when they had it. And we talked to him, and he said, this team was ready to get going. They believed they had the pieces, and you could see the first weeks it really does appear they have the pieces to go far. So, Tom, who's our week 2?
I know that we want to give some, other recognition, right? Gala was in there, right? Berry was in there. Skinner was in there. Willoughby was in there. Some of the names that we knew had great weeks, too. We don't want to say that they didn't have good weeks. This was the one we just thought had one just a hair a little bit better. But no doubt we've had some other guys that had some really big weeks. So now week 2, again, guys that had big weeks. But we cannot deny 340 yards by the ground. Xander Hine from Randolph gets the Freak of the Week for week 2. Unbelievable against a very good CSP team. Again, Drake, Gosella, right? Warburton, Holcomb down in Portville. All you guys, great weeks. We noticed it. Don't get me wrong. Just at 340 yards by the ground was just something against a very good CSP team.
Yeah, we just couldn't overlook that performance. I believe he's the one of 2 returning Connolly Cup finalists from last year, off to a good start. So, a reminder, we have, 5 games this weekend. Starts Thursday night at 7, South Park Kenny's. And then Friday we have a triple header at 7. Lockport at Jamestown, Fredonia, Tonawanda, Pioneer, West Seneca East, and then we're capping it off Saturday afternoon. It's Western New York Maritime at Canisius, 2 o'clock. You can catch that all right here on Western New York Athletics. So, Tom, week 3 is right around the corner. Tell me one thing you're looking forward to most.
Conference play. This is where it kicks off, right? There are a lot of matches up where you go into conference play. You cannot take any team lightly. One loss in your conference could be a difference of whether you get to the playoffs or not. You can't underestimate anybody out there. You need to make sure you're up for ready for Friday Night Lights. You better deliver it on Friday night, Thursday night, Saturday. I don't care when it is, but you be better ready to deliver.
I couldn't have said it any better myself. That will wrap us up. So for Tom Prince, our producer, Heidi Gunther, I'm Francis Beck. Thank you for tuning in to Western New York High School Football Weekly. We'll be back next week with more high school football coverage.
Life can be full of surprises, but not always the good kind. That's why we're committed to providing safe, quick, and cost-effective care, and we keep it simple. Just walk in. We're here for you. Learn more today.
With exclusive buyer insights and our 100% money-back guarantee, we're confident we'll find buyers for your home. Howard Hanna. Home happens here.